So thank you very much for coming to the panel, and thank you for staying on. I understand that there was quite long day yesterday and today, so we very much appreciate your participation. And today we will try to talk about pretty difficult topic without which we cannot talk about any recovery. It's fight against corruption. And we have pretty interesting panel here, so I hope you enjoy the discussion. I just will start from introducing the panelists. My name is Katarina Ryzhenko. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Legal Affairs of Transparency International Ukraine, and I have the honor to moderate today the panel. Today among the other panelists, what we have here is Mr. Viktor Pavlushik, the head of National Anti-Corruption Prevention Agency. This agency is basically probably the strongest when we talk about the amount of functions that Mr. Pavlushik have to organize around his work. So among the main things is financial monitoring, political party financing, and a lot of other things that relate to anti-corruption policy. So thank you, Mr. Pavlushik, for participating. We also have on the left from me Martina Boguslavets. Martina is the chair of RISE Coalition. This is a coalition of NGOs in Ukraine and experts that work within the topic of recovery. But also Martina is the head of anti-corruption non-governmental organization, MEJA. She has a lot of years of experience in different roles, and representation of civil society is very important when we talk about anti-corruption in Ukraine. Then next speaker that I have on my left is Alan Pak Christensen. He is the head of European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative, program that worked in Ukraine for quite a long time and works with capacity building and a lot of other issues relating to anti-corruption and anti-corruption ecosystem. And considering European integration these days, the program is even more and more important in Ukraine. On the right from me, I have the first of all, I will start from that side, as with the other. The head of High Anti-Corruption Court, Ms. Vera Mikhailenko, and she's a judge, and also the head of the court. Considering how long we got to the point where we actually created in Ukraine the High Anti-Corruption Court, I think it is very important to have representation to talk about adjudication of corruption cases, and we're glad that Ms. Vera Mikhailenko today is present with us. And also I have on my right is Mr. Nicolas Pinot. He is a representation of OECD, and he's a deputy director for the Directorate for Financial and Enterprise Affairs. And considering the work of OECD in Ukraine and related to Ukrainian topics, I think it's a good balance to have the international organization representation, also talk about the things concerning fight against corruption in Ukraine. So this for the speakers of today's panel, and I hope we can move to the discussion directly. Just to say a couple of words that fight against corruption in Ukraine is a pretty long battle. We did a lot of things we achieved within the last 10 years. In Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International, we moved a long way, and we're among the most successful cases in the world if you look at the last 10 years. But obviously it's not only achievements. There are some challenges, especially related to the war efforts and to the European integration and to international standards that everyone expects of us to achieve, and not only inside the country but a lot of our international partners. And I would like to start today's discussion from Mr. Pavlushik. And I guess my first question would be that Ukraine, in fight against corruption, tried to approach as systematically as possible, and we have adopted anti-corruption strategy and state anti-corruption program for some time now, for over 2 years. So now there are a lot of discussions if actually Ukraine, considering all the circumstances, needs such a broad document that covers a lot of aspects. First question is like, is it actually effective? Do we need such a strategic, broad approach when it comes to the policy making and anti-corruption? And considering that we need to move towards basically starting the development of a new strategy, a new program, what do you see went well, and what are the challenges when it comes to the anti-corruption policy in such big documents? Thank you, please.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for such a great presentation of NECP, first of all, and me. I want to say that it's hard to present all the results and all the effectiveness of work we do fighting corruption and preventing corruption. When I present more about that, this information to our partners, I always hear the question, and you did that during the war? And it's a great example that we did a great job, and we are doing now a great job to fight corruption and to prevent corruption in Ukraine. And state anti-corruption program, it's one of them, and it's a high quality national program document. And with this document, this document will help us to achieve sustainable improvements in different spheres of life. Of course, the effective execution of state anti-corruption program will enhance transparency of in government and business sectors. It's significantly reduce corruption in Ukraine and will help to improve public life in 15 most vulnerable spheres of life. And also it will help to generate around 200 billion hryvnias when we implement all the reforms what needed according to state anti-corruption program. First of all, I want to say that just a little bit more than 1 year, state anti-corruption program is already implemented, and already 25% of measures to be done already done, and it's a great result for country during war. And the main measures will be done until the end of 2025, we first of all we need in this state anti-corruption program there are involved 109 state agencies, and to efficiently implement state anti-corruption program we need to work together with those state agencies, together with civil society, which can control this, also using the great IT tool, its informational system of monitoring of implementation state anti-corruption program. And everybody here can see the result of implementation measures on our website, in the internet, on Ukraine and English languages both. Also talking about cooperation with state agencies and civil society, I want to add that according to our survey, 73% of people they believe that Ukraine is a corrupted country. Really, the number of people who are facing corruption in their life is less, but this 73%, its number shows us the will of Ukrainian people fighting corruption and living in country without corruption. That's why we state agencies need to be aware of that and to do our best for achieving good results. And of course we are now preparing our work for next state anti-corruption program, and it's hard work, and I believe we will do our best to make it, but we need to focus on main issues while writing, developing this program. First of all, it's achieving long-lasting, sustainable, positive changes. Second, it's implementation of international standards as well as aligning Ukrainian laws with EU acquis and NATO requirements. It's of course we here in panel, European Union aligning panel, and the last but not least, it's I've already told, it's ensuring continuous and coordinated interaction of all state bodies without exception.
Thank you very much. We will talk later about the challenges. So let's concentrate now on the positive side. And I have to say that we, as Transparency International, a lot of other civil society organizations participated and were involved in creation of anti-corruption strategy and program. And I think it's one of those examples where successful cooperation between the state, the civil society, expert society, international partners came together, and it's still even 2 years afterwards, and creation was even longer than 2 years, when we still say that is one of those examples that we can be proud of, and we should take that that achievement to the next anti-corruption program. So thank you for your intervention. But considering that prevention is obviously very important, the strategic view is very important, but often, as Mr. Pavlushik mentioned, a lot of people in Ukraine, over 70%, think that there is a lot of corruption in the country. One of the main kind of requests, where are the top corruption officials are now? Like, are they behind the bars? Are they adjudicated and have their sentences in the cases? And I think it's very good that we have now the judge of the High Anti-Corruption Court, the head of the High Anti-Corruption Court. So we can ask basically this question: how you can present and show us the result of Anti-Corruption Court. Is it working, if you can say so, after 5 years of creation? Do we achieve the goal where we adjudicate the top officials efficiently, and in order to satisfy this request, the need from the public and from the international donors to the justice in corruption cases? Please, Ms. Mikhailenko.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Yes? As you know, the High Anti-Corruption Court is a new specialized court established in Ukraine 6 years ago to consider criminal cases of high-level corruption. Being the first is not easy, of course, but it definitely worth it in our case, because we are the first court in Ukraine, which established in special procedure with the participants of the international experts from different countries. This competition was during an open and transparent competition, like I said, and now I can say with certainty that it has worked, of course. Because the member of the Public Council of International Experts assessed the integrity of the judicial candidates based on the result of special inspection by law agency, by law enforcement agency, based on information which was given civil society representative, and based on information provided by the candidate themselves. And PCIA members are definitely have fundamentally changed their approach to public interviews, as they have demonstrated complete impartiality and objectivity. The process of establishing the HAC and holding of the judge position was a great public interest, as you know, because HAC was created as a response to a request of Ukrainian society and international partners to fight corruption at the highest level. This approach, by the way, has been proposed even in other countries, such as Moldova. Moreover, at the request of the Ukrainian society and the international partners, Ukraine is actively preparing creation a high administrative court with the same design. This is the High Anti-Corruption Court has been taken as an example, as a successful story of creation such a specialized court. And this is about experience, of course, about the experience of a country which is ready to recognize its weaknesses and not only declaratively but actually striving to become a full member of European community. Before the establishment of the Hague, members of parliaments, ministers, deputy ministers, and other high-ranking public officials had never been convicted in the history of independent Ukraine. Since the beginning of the Hague's work, MPs, judges, prosecutors, and high-level civil servants whose corruption acts have been proven beyond reasonable doubt in open and adversarial trial have been convicted and punished. At the same time, Hague also issues acquittals, and this is quite new for Ukrainian society and for Ukrainian system of justice. But this is about the rule of law. I don't brag about our statistics or some individual cases, but I can say that we are proud of the proven fact of equality before the law and the inevitability of responsibility despite of the category of position. And this an independent, but not the only preventive measure in fight against corruption. And I would like to say that Hague's practice shows that the rule of law standards in Ukraine are real, and the rule of law standards in Ukraine work. We also receive feedback and evaluation from the public, colleagues and partners as we carry out our activity as open as possible. And the honest, transparent and principled work of Hague's judges has led to expansion the court powers. And now, in addition to criminal cases of considerable complexity, we consider also civil cases on recognizing the assets as unjustified, and administrative cases on imposing sanctions on persons, I mean individuals and enterprises, who support Putin regime in terms of the war in Ukraine. Thus, the Hague is about openness and trust of the society, of state, and trust of international partners, of course. That's why today I can say with certainty that thanks to efforts of Ukrainian society and international partners, the creation of such specialized court as the Hague has paid off.
Thank you very much. I just remember when a little bit less than 10 years ago, there was a discussion that we don't need anti-corruption court, that every court should be anti-corruption, and how much effort from everyone here on the panel and way more people took to get to the point where we say that our experience not only positively evaluated, but actually other countries look at it as an example. So it sometimes scares me that it only took us slightly more than 5 years to reach that point. But I also would like to get to our next speaker, and considering that Mr. Christensen works with a program that actually builds the capacity of anti-corruption infrastructure, and we already heard from two specific agencies from their point of view what are the achievements and how well it works or not. I think it will be only logical to address you, Mr. Christensen, like, in your experience, considering that you even work with not just these two agencies, but a way broader spectrum, including civil society, what are the trends that brought us to some successes that we can now brag and present about? Because about the challenges we will talk a little bit later. So what do you think is the common denominator that brought us here, and maybe what were the challenges on the way? Mr. Christensen.
Thank you so much. I agree with you that the anti-corruption institutions have become a success for Ukraine. And I think a proof of that is that these very difficult months for Ukraine, where they have staff in the army, staff abroad, they experience budget cuts, difficult security situation in Kiev, hours in shelter. These institutions are anyway delivering more results and processing more cases than ever before. NAPU, SAPU, High Anti-Corruption Court, not because there's more corruption, but because they have become more effective. And I think that's really an important point. As you mentioned, we are working with these institutions daily. We are building capacity. We assist them with legislation. We provide international expertise. And I must say we are really impressed by the work that they're doing. And the key result is that no one is above the law. I think the head of the High Anti-Corruption Court mentioned some good examples of categories of top-level officials that in the past were untouchable but no longer are untouchable. I think it's extremely important for the society, and I think we can also say it's also commenting on your remarks, Katerina, that it's a tribute to civil society actors that pushed for these institutions to be established also long before our international partners began to do the same. Another proof, of course, is that Ukraine has now the best score ever on the Corruption Perception Index. You mentioned it briefly. And we see very good progress from 22 to 23. Ukraine is now at the same level as some of the other EU candidate countries. That has never happened before. Actually, many of us working with anti-corruption in Ukraine do not always feel that these achievements get the attention that they deserve. We produced a small paper you'll find here in the room where we try to counter some of the false narratives that are out there. One dilemma, of course, is that the corruption cases that are being revealed, and some of them are very spectacular, I mean, where top-level officials caught red-handed with millions of dollars, they're often portrayed as signs that corruption is on the rise, that corruption is so critical for the Ukrainian state, while what is actually happening is that Ukraine is cleaning up. Thanks to anti-corruption institutions, thanks to investigative media, these cases are being revealed. They're not a sign of more corruption, they're a sign of success in fighting it. Why are they so successful? I think because Ukraine has adopted a very rigid, comprehensive legal framework for the institutions with a number of safeguards to ensure their independence and their objectivity. The president of the court just mentioned the selection process. I think that's one way to ensure independence, using international experts, giving them the decisive voice in the selection process. And we see good results coming out of those processes. This legislation didn't come by itself. I think it's a joint effort of civil society partners, reform-oriented politicians, international partners, and no doubt that the EU integration process has had an impact. EU conditionalities, the 7 steps, EU technical support have been key in ensuring this framework is now in place. We are working closely with both EU colleagues and with Ukrainian colleagues, and we can see how far Ukraine is ready to go these months to accommodate the recommendations that are coming from the side of the EU. And we see a clear linkage between Ukraine doing its homework and the EU delivering on the EU track. We hope we'll also see that by the opening of negotiations later this month. my final point, while these anti-corruption institutions have been successful, it doesn't mean there's no corruption in Ukraine. And I think that's important to keep in mind. Still much work to be done. We see it in surveys, we hear it from the private sector, and not on all parameters are things going in the right direction at the moment. Corruption continues to be a major challenge, and if we'll have time, I'll hope to say a bit more about that later, what we should be doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. We will come back to that, to the challenges and next steps. And I would like to pass to our next speaker, Mr. Nicolas Pinot, about considering the work of OECD, especially in the last couple of years. Working group on bribery is kind of discussed widely in Ukrainian context and, as I understand, among the international partners. And Ukraine started working with working group on bribery from 2022, and there are some discussions. Do we need it, considering the focus of the convention and the working group on foreign bribery? Should we maybe first address the more burning issues, because that working group is kind of a little bit about the broader spectrum? So I guess my logical question, how do you assess the need of Ukraine to move towards that way? And do we need this broader overlook on the fighting against corruption in Ukraine, please?
Thank you, Katerina. And I think Ukraine needs this broader spectrum. Actually, sometimes the argument is that foreign bribery is actually too specific for Ukraine. But to start with, let me perhaps recall quickly what the working group on bribery, which is hosted by the OECD, is doing, and what the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention is about. So it's about indeed fighting the bribery of foreign public officials in international commercial transactions. So typically, this is an instrument whereby its adherents and its members commit to fight the bribery by their own companies, typically big multinational enterprises, when those companies are trying and are bribing foreign public officials, so public officials of other jurisdictions, typically to get commercial contracts and activities related to trade and investment. This is a very strong mechanism. It gathered 46 parties, the 38 OECD members and 8 non-OECD members, including Russia, by the way, but Russia is suspended from this group, as you may well imagine. And it's very stringent, both in the sense that the legal requirements to adhere to this convention are very, very strong, very strict. So in terms of aligning the legal framework of its adherents to the best practices in terms of fighting corruption. But also, and most importantly, this is underpinned by a very robust monitoring peer review mechanism, whereby, in fact, each of the 46 parties are subject to an evaluation regularly by the other members of the group. It's a mechanism of naming and shaming that works on the basis of a consensus -1. So it's very powerful because the country under evaluation doesn't have a veto on the evaluation made by the rest of the group. And this is made public. And of course, as you probably imagine, no governments like to be named and shamed. So it's very powerful. So why is it important for Ukraine? Maybe not so much because Ukraine has indeed globalized multinational corporations that could bribe public officials in other jurisdictions. Indeed, it's not really the case, at least for now. But there are several, I would say, 3 levels at which this is very important for Ukraine. First, this is part of the OECD acquis. So, in a sense, just like there is a EU acquis, there is an OECD acquis. This is the whole body of OECD standards. And to become a member of the OECD, a country needs to validate those various standards. And one of those standards, one of the most important standards, is actually the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention. So and Ukraine has conveyed its readiness, its willingness to become a member of the OECD at some point, just like it wants to become an EU member. So to become a member of the OECD, it needs to go through the motion of the accession to the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention. And of course, becoming an OECD member for Ukraine is a way to signal its political commitment to a like-minded community of countries that are attached to democratic values, human rights, rule of law, good public policies, and of course, integrity. So that's the first aspect. It's a very powerful political signaling device. The second aspect is that by becoming part of the working group on bribery itself and adhering to the convention, in fact, it goes much further than just foreign bribery. In the convention, there is in particular one article, Article 5, which is about the independence of the judiciary, the independence of the prosecutorial authorities, the fact that national security cannot be a reason for not investigating, prosecuting, and sanctioning foreign bribery cases. So this has to do more generally, beyond foreign bribery. This has to do with the rule of law, with transparency, accountability. There is also this monitoring mechanism that I mentioned. It means that Ukraine would become subject to a regular evaluation of its anti-corruption policies. So it goes much further than just foreign bribery. It's about the functioning of the judiciary and the criminal system in general. And the further aspect, and the last one, is that this is a very strong catalyst for change and for reforms. Our Ukrainian colleagues are working very hard these days, I would get back to this later on, certainly, to change their criminal system to align with the convention, to change in particular the liability regime of legal person, to put in place effective reporting channels for whistleblower, and a couple of other issues which are extremely important for the criminal system in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinot. And I think it's actually a very good leeway towards our last speaker today when we talk about the broader issues of fighting against corruption. And here we had a representation of international partners, programs, state agencies. And it seems sometimes from the discussion of fighting corruption in Ukraine that we are concentrated too much on this classical so-called anti-corruption infrastructure. And we sometimes do not look wider, as for example, Mr. Pinot mentioned. So I guess my question to Ms. Martyna Boguslavets, is this work of so-called anti-corruption infrastructure classically enough, or do we need maybe to look a little bit broader, because corruption is not only the top corruption when we think about it. So Martyna, please, can you elaborate? What do you think should be done wider or more, if such needed is there, when we talk about fight against corruption?
Ekaterina, thank you very much for your question. But I mean, before answering that, I would like to give a big thanks on behalf of Ukrainian civil society to the Berlin conference, because comparing to the London conference and comparing to Lugano conference, that the first time we as a civil society, as independent Ukrainian civil society, are sitting here at the same panels with top officials and with, top politics could do our speech and could discuss the same topics at the same table, not at a separate table as for the civil society. It was in Lugano conference and in London conference, so thank you for that. And my second thanks will be for the Patriot system. When I was preparing to this panel, I had a text from my friend, and she texted me, Martyna, we had very loud night because the Russia attacked our Vasilkiv city infrastructure, and but we hit down more than 29 missiles out of 30 because of the air defense system. And thanks to German government, and very big thanks from my own side for the yesterday's message of giving us another air defense system. So thank you for that. Well, moving to the topic, I would say that nobody talks about that, but it's very important to understand that, yeah, we really have finally independent anti-corruption infrastructure like NACP, SAPO, NABO, highest anti-corruption court. But I would like to pay your attention that 72% of all of the corruption crimes committed in Ukraine are investigated by the national police. So that's very important, and it's very interesting because thanks to the state anti-corruption program that finally has been adopted by Ukrainian government, there is one anti-corruption measure in that program, and it says that finally, the first time in the history of Ukraine, we will do the open competition for the management staff of the National Police of Ukraine. And so we now know that the government is preparing such a draft law, and it should be registered in the government till the end of this year. But what it's very important for us as for the civil society is to involve experts, international experts to the competitive commission to this competition, because we have already things that already proved that it's very possible to create independent institutions like NABO, SAPO, and NACP, and let's be sincere. All of that happened because of the open competitions, because of the international experts within the competitive commission. So yeah, the national police, the law enforcement police itself is very important in the whole anti-corruption reform, I would say. And also we have a state audit service agency, and also nobody talks about that, but it's also very important to reform such an agency, because the state audit service agency is the only one in Ukraine that is officially have the possibility and officially has a legal possibility to check, to do the financial monitoring. It means for us anti-corruption monitoring of local budgets, of municipal budgets. And regarding the reconstruction process, we understand that a lot of money will be allocated directly to the municipal budgets. So yeah, strengthening the capacity of the state audit service and also involving anti-corruption measures to the work of the state audit service is also very important.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boguslavets. And I think sometimes there is a need to look a little bit broader and on the issue of fighting against corruption. Even though with already created bodies and systems, we still have some problems to fix. And now we will come to that a little bit in more detail. And I want to start our second round of questions, but I have to insist to the speakers to be pretty concise if we want to fit into the time frame, so maybe we'll have some time for the questions from the audience. And I'm coming back to Mr. Pavlushik, basically with the questions, considering that you are slightly newly appointed head of agency, because Mr. Pavlushik, if I'm not mistaken, like around 100 days now you're on the position, so you should already understand the situation with the agency. What are your priorities and challenges that you point out for the agency that you have to address more to prioritize them in your work in the near future, Mr. Pavlushik?
Thanks, Katerina. I want to say that, first of all, I'll start with challenges and obstacles. And in this way, I want to say thanks for our civil society, for international partners, for members of parliament who made their best and restored the process of submitting declarations. It's great. But it's our challenge and our obstacle. We need to deal with about 2 million declarations for 3 periods of declarations. And we need to check them according to the logical arithmetical control and risk-oriented process. Also, we need to check for 3.5 years 22,000 reports of political parties. It's also a great challenge. Same problem, we need to conduct thousands of special checks, but we need to do that. It's a great job and it's a great example when we can prevent corruption. But of course, the great problem is resources for that. But nevertheless, we will try using our resources, using help of European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative, using help of Pro-Integrity Project and other numerous donors who help us in our job. We will do our best to, first of all, optimize our work. For example, we are now working on the process of auto-filling declaration, and I believe in October we'll force it in action, and every person who declares they can choose the option to autofill about 70% of lines in their declaration. And I think it's great for those who submit declarations, and it's great for us because we won't spend time and resources for checking information that state already has. And, for example, also mistakes. Another issue I want to talk, it's developing of such new issues like lifestyle monitoring to find illicit enrichment and unreported assets. And also conflict of interest also need to be more developed and more effective. And of course, we've talked today about state anti-corruption program. We need to make develop a new state anti-corruption program for years 2026 and 2030. That's maybe main challenges and main priorities.
Thank you very much. Considering that you started your work at the agency right after the declaration deadlines almost were over, I would assume that you have a lot of interesting now activities considering to dealing with those challenges. And I would like to come back to Ms. Vera Mikhailenko. And considering that with High Anti-Corruption Court, some of the issues were relatively recently addressed and challenges like additional judges, and there is competition now ongoing for the judges, single judge adjudication cases also was a long time coming, and finally the law is adopted and you already started to implement this law. So do you have anything else you need to address, and are there any more challenges, or you're set and good and now only the bright future in front of you? Please.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yes, last year the High Council of Justice and the High Qualification Commission of Judges agreed on our initiative to increase the number of judges of the first and appeal instances by 25 positions. And just now the initial stages of the competition for this position are underway. And by the way, the competition, this competition will be with the same procedure as the first time, I mean with the participation of international experts. And this, in my opinion, this is about capacity, the ability to be strong, to be effective, and to be independent in the administration of justice. Another step in enhancing the capacity of the High Anti-Corruption Court is the change in legislative procedure that allowed for a one-judge trial. Also, these changes have been recently introduced. We already have an example where it took only 3 days from judge receipt indictment to the sentencing. Only 3 days. Yeah, of course, it was a case based on a plea bargain, but it is a verdict anyway, and it is a completed case. But also Hague is about challenges, of course, because in addition to the aggressors' military actions and administration of justice during rocket attacks and total blackout, we also have to overcome logistical challenges. The most important of which is to obtain own buildings, because despite the fact it is Ukraine's obligation to ensure the court with own permanent buildings, the judges who are members of one panel are still located in 2 different buildings in Kiev. And of course, when we talk about this problem, we can't ensure smooth organization of all processes which we need for administration of justice. And we have one more problem, because our new colleagues, new judges who will appointed during this competitive proceeding, we don't have any place to locate them, absolutely nowhere. When we talk about increase of the number of judges, we should talk about new competent staff. We should talk about IT equipment, security requirement, of course, electronic system for courtrooms, etc., etc. And of course, it is about money, about resources of the state, which is in the big war, more than 2 years.
Ms. Michalenko, I have to be a little bit harsh moderator.
Yes.
Please.
Okay, and one more problem when I would like to mention, of course, it is our legislation. You know, of course, all this problem, I mean about abuse of the procedural rights, when we know that our criminal proceeding code is a very democratic, and it is very good, of course, in our reality, in our situation. But some norms allow to the participants not only slow down the case consideration, but absolutely block this case, and because some participants use this norm in bad faith, and we know about this.
Unfortunately, thank you very much. Unfortunately, top corruption is not only about good new infrastructure, but also additional resources for those who are being accused in top corruption. And they do use their resources very well, which we cannot blame on them. So we need to measure up. I would like to come back to Mr. Christensen, and basically, we have pretty clear demands and recommendations from European Union and other international partners. Those are understandable, let's say, even if we disagree with them. But from your experience working so long with anti-corruption in Ukraine, maybe there are some other ways to improve our reforms and our efforts that could be used in order for us to succeed a little bit faster. Can you please tell us?
Thanks. I will try. Now we talked before about all the achievements, and I think very, of course, important to keep in mind. But we also need to be aware that when you ask the Ukrainians, around 90% will say that corruption is the biggest issue in Ukraine after the war with Russia. So clearly there's more to be done. There was an expert once who talked about the anti-corruption institutions as being like an island of integrity in a hostile sea, and we need to protect this island. But I think we also need to expand it, to expand the territory, and to expand the anti-corruption agenda. And why do I think so? And why now? And there are mainly two reasons. One is that the anti-corruption institutions are delivering in addressing high-level corruption cases. This work is extremely important and will continue to need our support and our attention. But this work is on track. And I think it gives Ukraine a chance to broaden the anti-corruption agenda. The second point is that the Ukrainian society is changing. There's clearly less tolerance for corruption today than ever before. We see that in our surveys. With all the hardship Ukrainians are going through, they want to build something even better on the other side. And I think it gives Ukraine an opportunity to mobilize the public much more than in the past and mobilize people in preventing and fighting corruption. So what should be done? You mentioned, Katarina, the EU integration, and of course that is a track that is there. Accession negotiations will be, I think, a great opportunity for Ukraine to continue doing reforms, mainstream anti-corruption across sectors, close gaps for corruption where we find them. Not only an opportunity, I mean actually a demand if Ukraine wants to make progress in moving towards the European Union. I know that the EU and many member states stand ready to support Ukraine in this process. I think we also should be aware that there are some constraints due to the war in terms of capacity and resources available that of course will set some limits. So while this EU track will entail some demands, directions from abroad, it also leaves room for Ukraine to set its own anti-corruption course and agenda. Also because there's very little key EU legislation in the field of anti-corruption. And here we think there's a need to have some thinking going on and some visions coming from Ukraine. And we would like to facilitate a debate internally in Ukraine, not only among anti-corruption experts, but reaching out to media, civil society, business people, local officials, academics, like a whole society approach. And therefore I'm happy to announce today that we are launching a new project together with the OECD that we call Visions of the Future, that will have the aim to come up with some ideas and set an agenda for the future fight against corruption. So we are looking forward to see what will come out of that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I have to come back to Mr. Nicolas Pinot with a second round of questions. And I guess the logical question, considering the working group on bribery, what have we done already as a country to move forward with that process, and how you assess our success with it? And please be concise.
Okay, I will make your life slightly easier by being brief. Look, there's been really good progress. So just to clarify, the status of Ukraine in the working group on bribery right now is a status of participant. It's a sort of observership. It's a bit more than just being an observer, because they have to report on progress regularly to the group. And also they're making a commitment to ask for accession to the OECD convention down the road. They were granted the participant status back in February 2023. This status is going to expire, because it's for 2 years. It's going to expire next February 2025. So they will have at that stage to decide whether Ukraine is seeking accession to the OECD convention. And if they do so, and we expect them to do so, they will go through a very formal process of assessment, technical assessment of their ability to basically meet the requirements of the convention. There is good progress. They are working at legislative level to ensure that all the bills that are necessary to comply with the convention are going through Parliament. There was a draft bill recently in Parliament on the non-tax deductibility of a bribe, which is one of the requirements of the convention. They are working, as I said before, on the liability regime of legal person, which is also another important requirement, which I must say will also lay the ground for EU accession down the road. So all this is actually very consistent. So there is good progress. They're super engaged, very committed. So we are pretty optimistic.
Thank you very much. And considering that we already heard about the challenges and priorities of the state agency, some opportunities and ways to improve for us from the representation of international partners and organizations. I think it's only logical question to ask Ms. Bohuslavets, where is civil society in all of that? Do we fit in, or are we engaged? And what is your experience of participating in all these anti-corruption reforms as a civil society representative?
Yes, thank you. Well, frankly speaking, the last 2 years we changed the principle how we work. I mean, out of the principle only of critics to the principle not only shame and blame, but strengthen the capacity of the agencies. And in terms of anti-corruption within the reconstruction, for example, our coalition did like more than 100 anti-corruption amendments to the legislation, to the bylaws, how the money are allocated from the funds, and so on and so forth. But frankly speaking, regarding the last news of we think on political reasons, on dismissal of the ministry and dismissal of the head of the agency for restoration, we have kind of concerns whether the new head of the agency and whether the new two ministries will have the same political will to take into account all of our anti-corruption amendments to the legislation, to the bylaws on reconstruction, the same as the two teams that I already mentioned had within the 2 previous years within our partnership with participation with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martina. And I have to say that we are sitting here all friends and talking and during the panel. It doesn't mean that during the actual work and specific issues, civil society and international partners and state agencies do not disagree once upon a time. But I think that is a very good sign that we actually managed to come together and present the achievements and talk clearly about the obstacles that we face. And I think it's one of the kind of good indicators on how the work in anti-corruption in Ukraine is going and how well stakeholders are involved. And considering that we started the panel a couple of minutes later due to technical issues, I will take this opportunity and ask, maybe there are several questions from the audience and that you would like to address to our speakers. And can we use the microphone somewhere? They promised us that we can. Oh, here comes, okay. Please, here there is a hand in front. Can you please introduce yourself and pose the question? And if you know who you want to address it to, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, my name is Dario Rasch. I'm an entrepreneur in Ukraine, knowing obviously corruption very well. I don't know to whom to ask this question, but my question would be, can one of you take floor on war-related corruption on a small level, whether it's mobilization, or on a larger level, whether it's purchasing war-related material and things? I have not heard anything about this. My feeling is that general corruption develops in a very nice way, but that war-related corruption does not develop in a very nice way. And I would be interested to understand whether that is true and what we are doing to fight that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I will take another one, then we can come back to the speakers. Here comes another question if you... Thank you.
Доброго дня.
Good morning, Serhiy Nizhinsky, head of an NGO, UA Experts, Union of Anti-Corruption Experts that deals with preparation and training of people working for the anti-corruption agencies and forms the society that cares. The question to all of you is the following. Don't you think that investment into people of Ukraine, in particular in the young generation, is now super important issue as regards training of people. Because on the one hand, legislative collisions and the draft laws, that's all very nice. On the other hand, when we see the outflow of people who go abroad, it's very important to preserve those experts who have not gone abroad to work for different international projects, but who want to stay in Ukraine to develop it, the anti-corruption work. That's why what exactly is done now to support the investments into the civil society, into people, and how is your support built of the anti-corruption initiatives? Thank you.
So I will get back to the speakers here, and we have one question about war-related corruption, and if you have any thoughts, and another one about the investment in human resources in order to proceed with all the achievements that we have so far. Any of the speakers would like to address any? Okay, so Mr. Christensen, you have the.
Thank you. On war-related corruption, the military is not something that we follow closely, but I just want to make one comment, and that is, I think we're all aware of some of the stories that have been with procurement to the military, non-lethal. I'm thinking about we had with food for the soldiers, we had with some of the uniforms and so on, and I think that's actually a good example of stories that are revealed and action taken by the parliament. Now I can see we have the chairwoman of the anti-corruption committee here that somehow adopted a law that closed that loophole we had there, created more transparency. And now we have an agency in place with a very dedicated leadership that really wants to change how it was in the past with this non-lethal procurement to the military. When it comes to the lethal part, I have nothing to add.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers who would like to address Mr. Pavlushik, please?
For example, talking about an ACP, we are conducting surveys. For example, now it's procurement under martial law, and also we make numerous other researches mitigating corruption risks and eliminating them. And we always try to do our best. We talking about another question and my previous obstacle that we have no so many resources for that, but we use experts who can help us, and we trying to do such risk assessment and to propose actions that can be used by state agencies and state properties. For example, we had already previously had research on Ukроборонпром and gave them also recommendations to implement.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else from the panel? Okay, Ms. Vera Mikhailenko, please.
I would like to react to the question about corruption during the war. Of course, if we talk about the High Anti-Corruption Court, we have some amount of this case now. Some of them are on the stage of indictment, but the mostly are in the pre-trial investigations. That's why we can't hear about it, and it is clear. And I think it is, of course, I can't comment these cases because they have not finished yet, but I think it is only the question of time when we can hear about these cases.
Thank you very much, and unfortunately I have to round up the discussion at this point, and thank you very much for the audience for coming and listening to us. Thank you very much for the speakers to talk about the issues fighting corruption in Ukraine, and we are very happy to have this platform to address anti-corruption reform within the URC. So have a nice afternoon, and thank you to everyone.